Bear cub stuck inside dumpster. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you are watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. In the sleepy town of Cedar Mill, nestled between rolling hills and ancient forests, a rusty dumpster sat behind Pinewood Elementary School. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the playground as children's laughter faded with the final bell. Inside one of the classrooms, 4-year-old Olivia Bennett played quietly with wooden blocks, waiting for her mother who worked as the school nurse. Her soft brown curls bounced as she carefully stacked the colorful shapes, humming a simple tune to herself. Beyond the classroom window, in the shade of towering pines, a small black bear cub wandered cautiously toward the school grounds. Its mother had been missing since morning, when hunters had startled them apart. Hungry and frightened, the cub's sensitive nose caught the scent of yesterday's lunch scraps drifting from the dumpster. With each hesitant step, it moved closer to the metal container, unaware of the danger awaiting. Miss Reynolds, Olivia's teacher, was busy organizing papers at her desk, occasionally glancing at the child but focusing on finishing her work. "Just a few more minutes, sweetie," she said. "Your mom is finishing up with a student who scraped his knee." Olivia nodded and continued building her tower, but a strange noise from outside caught her attention. She tilted her head, listening to the scratching sounds growing louder. Curious, she abandoned her blocks and toddled to the window, pressing her tiny hands against the glass. Her wide blue eyes spotted the small bear cub now climbing the side of the dumpster, its claws scraping against metal. The cub reached the top edge, balancing precariously as it sniffed the promising scents. Then, in an instant, its paw slipped. With a startled yelp that sounded almost like a child's cry, it tumbled inside, disappearing from Olivia's view. Only the echoing thumps and desperate scratches revealed its panicked struggle to escape. "Bear," Olivia whispered, pointing to the window. "Bear stuck." Miss Reynolds glanced up distractedly. "Yes, dear." "Bears live in the forest," she replied, not understanding what the child had actually seen. Outside, a group of middle school students cutting through the back of the school spotted the commotion. Instead of seeking help, 13-year-old Tyler Jenkins and his friends gathered around the dumpster, their laughter drowning out the cub's frightened cries. "Look, it can't get out," Tyler called, peering over the edge. "Let's see what happens if we close the lid." His friend Marcus hesitated. "Maybe we should tell someone?" "Don't be such a baby," sneered Tyler, already reaching for the heavy metal lid. "It's just a stupid bear." Olivia watched with growing concern, her innocent heart understanding what the older boys could not, that the cub was scared, trapped, and alone. Something stirred inside her, an instinct that surpassed her young age and limited experience. She had to help. Miss Reynolds' phone rang, drawing her attention away from her papers. "I need to take this call," she told Olivia. "Stay right here and play with your blocks. I'll be just outside the door." As soon as the teacher stepped into the hallway, Olivia glanced back at the window. The boys were now throwing small pebbles into the dumpster, laughing as the cub's frightened whimpers grew louder. With a determination surprising for a child so young, she pushed a chair toward the classroom door, which Miss Reynolds had left slightly ajar. Outside, the situation was deteriorating. Tyler had found a stick and was poking it through the gap in the dumpster lid they had partially closed. "Look, it's trying to bite it," he laughed, jerking the stick up and down while the cub frantically tried to defend itself. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Come on, Tyler, this isn't right. What if its mother comes back?" "She's probably dead," Tyler replied coldly. "Otherwise, where is she? Bears don't just leave their cubs." The third boy, Derek, pulled out his phone. Let's get this on video. We'll be famous online. Inside the classroom, Olivia carefully climbed down from the chair after pushing through the door. The hallway stretched before her, longer than it had ever seemed when holding her mother's hand. She took a deep breath and began walking toward the back exit, her small shoes making soft tapping sounds against the linoleum floor. The cub's cries grew more desperate, its energy fading as it jumped repeatedly, trying to reach the edge of the dumpster. Its small claws scraped uselessly against the slick metal walls, too high and too smooth to climb. Hunger and fear had weakened it, and dehydration was setting in after its long separation from its mother. "Maybe we should let it out," Marcus suggested, backing away slightly. "My dad says black bears aren't usually dangerous unless you mess with their cubs." "Well, this is its punishment for coming near our school," Tyler insisted, his voice carrying a cruelty born from his own troubles at home. "It needs to learn a lesson." Olivia pushed through the heavy back door, using all her strength to open it just enough to slip outside. The autumn air felt cool against her face as she stepped onto the concrete path leading to the dumpster area. She could hear the boys' voices growing louder, their laughter sharp against the cub's frightened whimpers. She paused, suddenly afraid. The boys were bigger, much bigger than her. Her mother had always told her to stay away from older kids who weren't being nice. But the cub's cries tugged at something deep within her, something she couldn't explain but couldn't ignore. From behind the school building emerged another figure, Mr. Patterson, the elderly janitor who always gave Olivia candy when her mother wasn't looking. He spotted the small girl heading toward the commotion and frowned, quickening his steps. "Olivia? What are you doing out here all alone?" he called. His weathered face creased with concern. Before she could answer, a low, rumbling growl emerged from the tree line at the edge of the school property. The sound froze everyone in place. The boys at the dumpster, Mr. Patterson on the path, and tiny Olivia standing between them all. A massive black bear emerged from the shadows, her eyes fixed on the dumpster where her cub's cries echoed. Her powerful muscles rippled beneath thick fur as she rose to her full height, sniffing the air. The mother bear had been searching for her lost cub all day, following its scent through the forest until it led her here, to this strange place filled with human smells. The boys scattered instantly, Tyler dropping his stick as they fled around the corner of the building. Only Derek had the presence of mind to grab Marcus's arm and pull him along as they ran. Mr. Patterson stood frozen, torn between running to Olivia and staying still to avoid attracting the bear's attention. "Don't move, Olivia," he whispered urgently. "Don't make any sudden movements." But Olivia, in the innocent wisdom of childhood, did something unexpected. She pointed to the dumpster and called out to the mother bear in her small, clear voice, "Baby bear stuck. Baby bear in there." The mother bear's attention snapped to Olivia, her dark eyes assessing this tiny human who stood unafraid, pointing toward the source of her cub's cries. For a heart-stopping moment, Mr. Patterson was certain the bear would charge, interpreting Olivia's movement as a threat. Instead, the massive animal dropped to all fours and approached the dumpster cautiously, her powerful nose confirming that her cub was indeed trapped inside. She circled the metal container once, twice, seeking an entry point, growing increasingly agitated as her cub's cries intensified at the sound of her huffing breaths. Olivia took a small step forward, ignoring Mr. Patterson's strangled warning. "I help," she said simply, moving toward the dumpster with the straightforward determination only a child could possess. Mr. Patterson's heart nearly stopped. "Olivia, no!" he hissed, taking a careful step forward, then freezing when the mother bear swung her massive head toward him, teeth slightly bared. From inside the school, Miss Reynolds had finally noticed Olivia's absence. She rushed down the hallway, pushing through the back door just in time to see the unbelievable tableau. Her 4-year-old student walking calmly toward a dumpster with a full-grown black bear standing beside it, while Mr. Patterson stood helplessly nearby. "Oh my God," she breathed, the words barely audible as fear closed her throat. The mother bear, now aware of more humans, grew increasingly agitated. She rose again to her hind legs, making threatening gestures toward the adults while keeping herself between them and the dumpster where her cub was trapped. But strangely, she continued to ignore Olivia, who had now reached the side of the dumpster. Inside, the cub's scratching had grown weaker, its cries softer from exhaustion. Olivia looked up at the tall metal sides, then back at the mother bear, who was now watching her with what seemed like desperate hope. "Step ladder," Olivia said clearly, pointing to the small metal step stool Mr. Patterson used to reach high places, which sat by the school wall. "Need step ladder." Ms. Reynolds began edging toward the phone in her pocket, intending to call for help, but stopped when the bear growled at her movement. The standoff continued, with the adults frozen in place while Olivia acted with the simple logic of a child. She walked to the step stool, dragging it slowly across the pavement toward the dumpster. The scraping noise made the mother bear turn sharply, but upon seeing what Olivia was doing, the animal backed away slightly, watching intently. "Olivia, sweetheart, please come here," Miss Reynolds called in a trembling voice. "The bear's mommy is very scared right now. We need to go inside." But Olivia shook her head firmly. "Baby bear stuck," she repeated, as if that explained everything. In her young mind, it did. Someone needed help, and she could provide it. The complexity of danger had no place in her simple calculation of right and wrong. With tremendous effort, she positioned the step stool beside the dumpster, then climbed up. Even with the extra height, she couldn't reach the top edge. She looked around, spotted a plastic crate nearby, and added it to her makeshift stairs. Mr. Patterson and Miss Reynolds watched in horrified fascination as Olivia climbed higher, now able to peer over the dumpster's edge. The mother bear paced anxiously, huffing and occasionally standing to check on her cub, but never threatening the small child who was somehow trying to help. "See, baby bear," Olivia announced, looking down into the dumpster where the exhausted cub had curled into a corner, its small body trembling with fear and fatigue. Just then, sirens wailed in the distance. Someone, perhaps one of the fleeing boys, had called for help. The sudden noise startled the mother bear, who reared up again, roaring her distress and fear. In that charged moment, Olivia did something that would later be described as either the bravest or most foolish act imaginable. She reached into the dumpster. "No!" Both adults screamed simultaneously, certain they were about to witness a tragedy. But instead of disaster, they watched as Olivia's small hands gently stroked the cub's head through the opening. "It's okay," she cooed, using the same words her mother said whenever she was frightened. "It's okay, baby bear." The cub, responding to the gentleness in her touch, stopped trembling and looked up at her with exhausted eyes. Somehow, impossibly, it understood she meant no harm. The wailing sirens grew louder as emergency vehicles approached the school. The mother bear became increasingly agitated, torn between fleeing from the human threat and staying with her trapped cub. She paced faster, huffing and growling, her powerful claws leaving marks on the asphalt. Mr. Patterson, drawing on decades of experience in these mountains, made a decision. Moving slowly, he approached the dumpster from the opposite side of the bear. "Olivia," he said calmly, "I'm going to help you get the cub out, but we need to be very careful and very quick." Miss Reynolds wanted to protest, to scream at him to grab Olivia and run, but she recognized the logic in his plan. The mother bear wouldn't leave without her cub, And once authorities arrived, the situation could escalate dangerously. There might be tranquilizers or worse. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Keep an eye on Mama Bear. If she charges, yell, and we'll drop everything and run," he replied, reaching the dumpster and carefully climbing up beside Olivia. The little girl looked up at him with complete trust. "We save Baby Bear," she stated simply. "Yes, darlin', we're going to try," he agreed, peering into the dumpster. The cub was small, probably only a few months old, and exhausted from its ordeal. It would be light enough to lift if it didn't struggle too much. Mr. Patterson removed his jacket and carefully lowered it into the dumpster. "We'll wrap him in this," he explained to Olivia. "Bears don't like human smells, but this might help him feel safer while we lift him out." Olivia nodded solemnly, watching as Mr. Patterson gently covered the cub with his jacket and slowly lifted the bundle. The cub squirmed weakly but didn't fight, too tired to resist. The mother bear grew increasingly restless as she watched her cub being handled, rising to her hind legs and huffing loudly. Miss Reynolds held her breath, certain that at any moment the bear would charge. With tremendous care, Mr. Patterson lifted the wrapped cub over the edge of the dumpster and cradled it momentarily. "Now we need to put him down very gently and back away," he told Olivia. "His mama needs to see that he's okay." The sirens were just around the corner now, seconds away from arriving at the school. Mr. Patterson quickly descended with the cub, placing the bundle on the ground about 15 feet from the mother bear. He then grabbed Olivia from her perch and backed away rapidly, joining Ms. Reynolds at a safer distance. The jacket moved slightly as the cub stirred inside. The mother bear approached cautiously, sniffing the air, her powerful nose sorting through the human scents to find her baby's familiar smell. With one massive paw, she carefully pulled away the jacket, revealing her cub. The small bear blinked in the sunlight, then caught sight of its mother. With a weak cry of recognition, it struggled to its feet and stumbled toward her. The mother bear gently nuzzled her cub, checking it over for injuries, huffing softly in what seemed like relief. The first police car rounded the corner, lights flashing. The mother bear instantly gathered her cub close, giving the humans one last look that almost seemed like gratitude, before lumbering quickly toward the safety of the forest. Within moments, they had disappeared among the trees. Officer Miguel Ramirez stepped out of his vehicle, hand on his holster, scanning the scene in confusion. "We got a call about a bear attack," he questioned, seeing only 2 adults and a small child standing by a dumpster. Ms. Reynolds let out a laugh that bordered on hysteria. "Not exactly an attack," she managed to say. "More of a rescue operation." Olivia's mother burst through the school doors, having heard the commotion. She ran to her daughter, gathering her into a tight embrace. "What happened? Are you okay?" Olivia smiled up at her mother, entirely unaware of the danger she had just faced or the extraordinary thing she had done. "We helped Baby Bear find Mama Bear," she explained simply. As the adults began the complicated process of explaining the situation to the rapidly growing number of authorities arriving at the scene, Olivia watched the edge of the forest. For just a moment she thought she saw the mother bear standing at the tree line, looking back at the strange little human who had helped reunite her with her precious cub. In that quiet moment, something profound passed between species, a recognition of the universal bond between parent and child, and the unexpected kindness that can emerge from the purest of hearts. By evening, the story of Olivia Bennett and the bear cub rescue had spread throughout Cedar Mill like wildfire. Local news vans parked outside the school, reporters eager to interview anyone connected to the extraordinary event. Olivia's mother, a typically private person, firmly refused all requests, concerned about the attention overwhelming her young daughter. At the Bennett home, Olivia sat at the kitchen table, coloring pictures of bears while her mother prepared dinner, still shaken by the day's events. "Honey," she said carefully, "what you did today was very dangerous. Bears are wild animals and they can hurt people, even when they don't mean to." Olivia looked up from her drawing, her expression thoughtful beyond her years. "Baby Bear was scared," she said simply. "Like when I got lost at the store, you found me then." Her mother felt tears welling in her eyes at the simple comparison. She knelt beside her daughter, stroking her soft curls. "Yes, but mama bears can be very protective of their babies. That's why we need to be careful around wild animals." "She wasn't mad," Olivia insisted. "She was scared. Her eyes were scared eyes." A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Olivia's mother opened it to find Mr. Patterson standing on the porch, his weathered face serious. "Sorry to disturb you, Miss Bennett, but I wanted to check on the little hero," he said, a gentle smile breaking through his concern. She invited him in, grateful for the presence of someone who had witnessed the event firsthand and might help her understand what had actually happened. The wildlife officers found them, Mr. Patterson reported as he accepted a cup of coffee. "Mother and cub, about 2 miles into the forest. They're both doing fine, though the cub was dehydrated. They're monitoring them but plan to leave them be." Olivia looked up from her drawing. "Baby Bear is okay?" "Yes, thanks to you," Mr. Patterson confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. "You know, I've lived in these mountains for 67 years and I've never seen anything like what happened today. That mother bear could have attacked at any moment, but she didn't. It was almost like she understood what you were trying to do." Olivia nodded as if this was the most natural conclusion in the world. She just wanted her baby back. At the edge of town, Tyler Jenkins sat alone on his bed, his earlier bravado replaced by a crushing sense of shame. His father had heard about the incident from practically everyone in town and had berated him harshly before retreating to the living room with a bottle of whiskey, as usual. Tyler stared at his phone, where text messages from friends alternated between mockery for running away and disbelief at what had happened after they fled. Derek had sent a blurry video showing little Olivia at the dumpster with the bear nearby, though he had been too far away to capture the actual rescue. With a sudden surge of emotion, Tyler deleted the video and threw his phone across the room. The image of the frightened cub, trapped and alone, kept flashing in his mind, along with the memory of his own cruel laughter. What kind of person did that make him? In the forest, under a canopy of stars, the mother bear curled protectively around her sleeping cub in a makeshift den. The day's trauma had exhausted them both, but they were together again, safe in the wilderness that was their home. The mother bear's sensitive nose still carried traces of the human child's scent, free from the fear and aggression that usually marked human encounters, filled instead with something the bear could not name but instinctively recognized: compassion. The next morning, Cedar Mill Middle School buzzed with excitement as students shared increasingly exaggerated versions of the bear incident. In 8th grade homeroom, Tyler sat silently, shoulders hunched, as his classmates discussed the event. "I heard the kid actually climbed inside the dumpster with the bear," one boy exclaimed. "No way," another countered. "My dad's on the rescue squad. He said the janitor opened the dumpster and the cub just jumped out right into its mother's arms." Marcus, sitting across from Tyler, caught his eye briefly before looking away. Neither boy had spoken about what they had actually done, how they had tormented the trapped cub before running away. The shame sat heavily between them. Their teacher, Mrs. Abernathy, entered the classroom carrying a newspaper. "Since everyone's talking about it anyway," she said, holding up the front page with its bold headline, "4-year-old shows extraordinary courage in bear cub rescue." "I thought we might discuss what happened as part of our environmental ethics unit," she continued. "There are important lessons here about wildlife management, human-animal conflict, and compassion." As Mrs. Abernathy began reading the article aloud, Tyler sank lower in his seat. The newspaper account mentioned several students who had discovered the cub but fled when the mother bear appeared. It didn't detail their actions, but Tyler felt as if every word was a direct accusation. When the teacher opened the floor for discussion, hands shot up around the room. Students shared their opinions about wildlife preservation, what should happen to bears that wander into town, and whether the little girl had been brave or foolish. "What about the bear's perspective?" Mrs. Abernathy prompted. "Imagine being that mother, knowing your baby is trapped and surrounded by creatures you've learned to fear." A girl in the front row raised her hand. "It must have been terrifying for her. Bears are really protective of their cubs. I'm surprised she didn't attack anyone. Maybe she could tell they were trying to help," another student suggested. Tyler's hand rose slowly, surprising even himself. When Mrs. Abernathy called on him, he swallowed hard. What if some people weren't trying to help? What if they were making things worse for the cub before everyone else arrived? A sudden silence fell across the classroom. Mrs. Abernathy studied Tyler's face carefully. "That would be very unfortunate," she said quietly, "but I'd like to think that even people who make mistakes can learn from them and do better next time." After class, she asked Tyler to stay behind. When they were alone, she simply asked, "Is there something you'd like to talk about, Tyler?" The dam broke. Words poured out of him. How they had laughed at the cub's distress, thrown things at it. How he had wanted to close the lid completely. As he spoke, tears streamed down his face. Mrs. Abernathy didn't interrupt or condemn him. When he finally fell silent, she said, "Thank you for your honesty. That couldn't have been easy." "Are you going to report me?" Tyler asked, voice barely audible. "I think you need to take responsibility for your actions," she replied. "But how you do that is important. Sometimes making amends is more valuable than just receiving punishment." Across town at Pinewood Elementary, Olivia had become an unwitting celebrity. Children gathered around her at recess, asking questions about the bear adventure. Teachers watched her carefully, still shaken by how close the community had come to tragedy. During story time, when Ms. Reynolds read a book about forest animals, Olivia raised her hand. "Bears are not scary," she announced to the class. "They're just big and worried about their babies." Ms. Reynolds exchanged glances with the teacher's aide. How does one explain the complex reality of wild predators to a child who had somehow bridged the ancient divide between human and bear? "Bears can be dangerous, Olivia," Ms. Reynolds explained gently. "What happened yesterday was very unusual. Most of the time we need to stay far away from wild animals, especially bears." Olivia considered this, then nodded. "But we can still be nice to them from far away," she concluded. That afternoon, Tyler Jenkins made a decision. After school, he walked to the local wildlife conservation office and asked to speak with a ranger. The busy office fell quiet as this teenager, voice shaking but determined, confessed his actions and asked what he could do to make things right. Ranger Diana Collins listened without interruption, then led Tyler to her office. "What you did was cruel," she said directly. "But I appreciate your honesty now. We always need volunteers for our conservation programs, and I think you might learn something by helping us educate people about local wildlife." For the first time since the incident, Tyler felt a small measure of relief. It wouldn't erase what he had done, but it was a step toward becoming someone different, someone better. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear in Cedar Mill. At the Bennett home, Olivia was eating breakfast when a knock came at the door. Her mother opened it to find Ranger Collins standing on the porch alongside a teenage boy who looked uncomfortable and nervous. "Good morning, Miss Bennett," the ranger greeted her. "I'm Diana Collins from Wildlife Services. I was hoping to speak with you and Olivia about what happened at the school. This is Tyler Jenkins. He's volunteering with our youth education program." Olivia's mother hesitated, protective instincts flaring, but ultimately invited them in. Olivia looked up from her cereal, immediately recognizing Tyler from the dumpster incident. Her expression remained neutral. Not afraid, not angry, simply observant in that disarming way children often are. "Hello, Olivia," Ranger Collins said, sitting at the table. "I wanted to thank you for helping the bear cub. You were very brave, though we usually don't want people to get that close to wild bears." Olivia nodded solemnly. "The baby bear was stuck," she explained, as if that justified everything. Tyler stood awkwardly by the doorway until Ranger Collins motioned him forward. He cleared his throat. I was there when the cub fell into the dumpster," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. Miss Bennett's eyes narrowed slightly. "Were you one of the boys who ran away?" Tyler flinched, but met her gaze. "Yes, ma'am, but that's not all. Before we ran, we weren't being nice to the cub. We scared it more. I was the worst." His voice broke slightly. "I'm really sorry." A heavy silence filled the kitchen. Olivia looked between the adults, sensing the tension but not fully understanding it. Finally, she said simply, "It's okay. The baby bear is with its mama now." The simple forgiveness in her voice brought unexpected tears to Tyler's eyes. He quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. Ranger Collins explained her reason for visiting. "We're starting a new education program about living safely alongside wildlife. I was hoping Olivia might help us by sharing her experience, with your supervision, of course. And Tyler here will be assisting with our presentations at local schools." Miss Bennett considered the proposal carefully. "I don't want Olivia to become some kind of spectacle," she said, "or for other children to think approaching bears is safe." "Absolutely," the ranger agreed. "That's exactly why we want to share this story, to emphasize that wild animals deserve respect and distance, while also teaching compassion for wildlife. Olivia wouldn't need to do much, maybe just visit a couple of classrooms with us." Olivia tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Can I see the baby bear again?" Ranger Collins smiled gently. "The cub and its mother have returned to the deep forest where they belong, but we have photos from our wildlife cameras that show they're doing well." She pulled out her tablet and showed Olivia a nighttime image of the mother bear and her cub drinking from a forest stream, both looking healthy. Olivia's face lit up with delight. Tyler watched the interaction, a complex mix of emotions washing over him. The little girl's joy in seeing that the cub was safe made his previous cruelty seem even more inexcusable. Yet her simple acceptance of his apology offered a path forward that he hadn't expected. "I'm creating educational materials about black bears," he said, finding his voice again. "Would it be okay if I asked Olivia what she remembers about the cub? It might help make the information more relatable for other kids." Miss Bennett studied the teenager thoughtfully, seeing the genuine remorse in his eyes. "I suppose that would be all right as long as I'm present." Over the next hour, an unlikely connection formed. Tyler sat with Olivia at the kitchen table, listening attentively as she described the bear cub in the simple, direct language of a 4-year-old. Her observations were surprisingly detailed. The cub's eyes looked like honey, Its fur was spiky when wet, and it made sounds like a puppy, but sadder. As Olivia spoke, Tyler carefully took notes, occasionally asking gentle questions to draw out more details. Miss Bennet watched their interaction with growing amazement. The sullen teenager who had entered their home was transforming before her eyes, his genuine interest in Olivia's experience creating a bridge between them. "You know," Ranger Collins said quietly as they watched the pair, "I've been working with wildlife for 20 years, and I've never seen anything quite like what happened at that school. Black bears are usually terrified of humans, especially when their cubs are in danger. They typically either flee or become aggressive." "So, why didn't this one attack?" Ms. Bennet asked. The ranger shook her head. "I don't have a scientific answer for you, but sometimes I think animals can sense intentions. That mother bear somehow knew your daughter was trying to help, not harm." At the table, Olivia was showing Tyler her drawings of the bears. "This one is the mama," she explained, pointing to a large scribbled shape. "She has worried eyes because she can't find her baby." Tyler nodded seriously. "That's really good, Olivia. You captured how she must have felt." He hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry I made things harder for her and her cub." Olivia considered this, then patted his hand with her small one. "You can help them now," she said with the simple logic of childhood. "That makes it better." 2 weeks later, the gymnasium of Pinewood Elementary School was filled with students from kindergarten through 5th grade, all seated cross-legged on the floor. At the front, a projection screen displayed colorful images of local wildlife, currently showing a mother bear with 2 cubs. Ranger Collins stood before the assembled children, microphone in hand. "Today, we have some special guests to help us learn about being good neighbors to the animals that share our town," she announced. She gestured to the side, where Tyler stood nervously in a volunteer shirt with the Wildlife Services logo. Beside him, holding her mother's hand, was Olivia, looking both excited and slightly overwhelmed by the crowd. "Some of you might have heard about an unusual event that happened right here at your school," the ranger continued. "A bear cub got stuck in a dumpster, and its mother came looking for it. Today, we want to talk about what we can learn from that experience." As the ranger spoke about wildlife safety, emphasizing the importance of proper trash disposal and what to do if you encounter a bear, Tyler watched the sea of young faces. They seemed genuinely interested, especially when Ranger Collins showed trail camera footage of local bears. He wondered if he would have paid attention to such a presentation 2 weeks ago, or if he would have been too busy trying to look cool for his friends. "And now," Ranger Collins said, "I'd like to invite Tyler to tell us about the educational project he's been working on." Taking a deep breath, Tyler stepped forward. His hands trembled slightly as he took the microphone, but his voice came out steady. "Hi, everyone. I'm Tyler from Cedar Mill Middle School. A few weeks ago, I did something I'm not proud of. When we found a bear cub trapped in your school dumpster, my friends and I scared it instead of getting help." A murmur ran through the crowd of children. Several teachers exchanged glances, surprised by the teenager's candor. "I've learned a lot since then," Tyler continued. "I've been volunteering with Wildlife Services and reading everything I can about black bears. They're actually amazing animals that usually want to avoid humans. They're not the scary monsters we sometimes think they are." He clicked a button, advancing the slideshow to display a simple but effective poster he had created. It showed illustrated guidelines for what to do if you find an animal in trouble. Keep your distance, call for adult help, contact Wildlife Services. The artwork wasn't professional, but it was clear and appropriate for young audiences. "I designed this poster to help kids remember what to do if they find an animal that needs help," he explained. Ranger Collins will be putting these up around all the schools in town. There's also a QR code that adults can scan to get the Wildlife Services number. The children applauded enthusiastically, though they were likely too young to fully appreciate the effort that had gone into the project. For Tyler, however, their response was validating. He had taken his mistake and created something positive from it. And now, Ranger Collins said, taking back the microphone, we have one more special guest. Olivia Bennett is only 4 years old, but she showed amazing compassion when she saw the bear cub in trouble. Olivia, would you like to come say hello? Miss Bennett gently encouraged her daughter forward. Olivia approached shyly, but gained confidence when she saw Tyler's encouraging smile. Ranger Collins knelt to Olivia's level and held the microphone for her. Olivia, can you tell everyone one thing you learned about bears? Olivia leaned toward the microphone, her voice small but clear. Bears are not for playing with, she said seriously. They need to stay in the forest with their families. The simplicity and wisdom of her answer brought smiles to the adults' faces. Ranger Collins nodded approvingly. That's exactly right, Olivia. And what should kids do if they see a bear? Tell a grown-up, Olivia replied promptly, and stay very still. As the presentation concluded, the children lined up to receive wildlife safety coloring books and stickers. Tyler stood by the exit, handing materials to each student with a genuine smile. He caught sight of Marcus hovering at the back of the gym, watching the proceedings with uncertainty. When the last child had filed out, Marcus approached cautiously. That was actually pretty cool, he admitted. The poster and everything. Tyler felt a complicated mix of emotions. Marcus had been part of that day at the dumpster, yet had shown at least some reluctance. Thanks, he replied simply. I'm helping with the middle school presentation next week if you want to come. Marcus shuffled his feet. Maybe I could help too, like hand out stuff or something? Before Tyler could respond, a commotion erupted outside the gymnasium doors. Children's voices rose in excitement, followed by teachers calling for order. Ranger Collins hurried toward the noise, with Tyler and the others close behind. They emerged into the hallway to find students clustered around the large windows overlooking the playground. Bear! Bear! Several children were shouting, pointing toward the forest edge beyond the school fence. Miss Reynolds pushed through the crowd, trying to restore calm. Everyone step back from the windows, please, she instructed firmly. Tyler moved closer, peering out alongside Ranger Collins. At the tree line, partially obscured by shadows, stood a black bear. Even from this distance, Tyler recognized the distinctive white chest patch visible on the mother bear from the previous incident. It's her, he whispered. The same bear. Ranger Collins frowned, reaching for her radio. This is unusual. She should be deeper in the forest by now, especially with a cub. Olivia wiggled through the crowd of legs until she reached the window. Mama Bear came back, she said matter-of-factly. Where's her baby? The ranger scanned the tree line carefully. I don't see the cub, she said, concern evident in her voice. This isn't normal behavior. Something's wrong. Within 30 minutes, the school had implemented its wildlife lockdown protocol. Children were kept inside, and wildlife services officers arrived to assess the situation. 2 officers with tranquilizer rifles positioned themselves strategically around the perimeter, while Ranger Collins coordinated from the school entrance. She's been pacing that same section of trees for over an hour, Officer Ramirez reported via radio. No sign of the cub anywhere. Should we trank her and relocate? Ranger Collins hesitated. Let's hold off. Black bears don't typically return to human structures without reason, especially after a negative experience. I want to understand what's happening before we intervene." Inside the school office, Tyler sat with Olivia and her mother, along with Mr. Patterson. The janitor's weathered face was creased with concern as he glanced periodically out the window. "This doesn't make sense," he murmured. "Bears are smart. They remember danger." Olivia tugged at Tyler's sleeve. "Maybe Baby Bear is stuck again," she suggested. Tyler had been thinking the same thing. "Ranger Collins," he called. "What if the cub is in trouble again? What if that's why she came back, because she needs help?" The ranger considered this possibility. "It's extremely unlikely a bear would seek human assistance," she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely dismissing the idea. "But we should check the area where she keeps returning." Outside, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, threatening an early spring storm. The wildlife officers reported that the mother bear continued her strange behavior, occasionally standing on her hind legs to look toward the school, then returning to pace the tree line. Mr. Patterson stood suddenly. "I just remembered something. When we cleaned up after the first incident, we found some blood on the dumpster edge. Not much, but the cub might have cut itself while trying to climb out." "If it was injured," Ranger Collins mused, "and the wound became infected." Lightning flashed in the distance, followed by a low rumble of thunder. The mother bear reacted to the sound, becoming more agitated. "We need to check the forest," Tyler said with sudden determination. "If the cub is hurt, it might be hiding somewhere near where the mother keeps returning." Ranger Collins shook her head firmly. "Absolutely not. We can't have civilians in a potentially dangerous wildlife situation, especially with a storm approaching. But what if she's trying to tell us something?" Tyler persisted. "What if she remembers that we helped before?" The ranger's radio crackled. "Collins, the bear is moving. Heading deeper into the forest now. Wait, she's stopping again, looking back toward the school." It almost seemed like an invitation. Ranger Collins made a decision. "I'll take a small team to investigate, staying at a safe distance. The rest of you remain here until we determine there's no threat." "I'm coming too," Mr. Patterson said firmly. "I know these woods better than anyone. Been walking them for 60 years. After a brief argument, the ranger reluctantly agreed, but insisted that Tyler and the others stay behind. As they prepared to leave, equipped with tranquilizer gear and first aid supplies, Olivia broke away from her mother and ran to the ranger. "Find Baby Bear," she said urgently, her small face serious. "He's scared." The ranger knelt to her level. "We'll look very carefully, Olivia, I promise." As the search team departed, the first heavy raindrops began to fall. Thunder rolled across the sky, and the remaining wildlife officers huddled under the school's overhang, maintaining their watch. Inside, Tyler paced restlessly by the windows. He couldn't shake the feeling that he should be out there, that he owed it to the cub after what he had done. When Miss Bennett stepped away to speak with the principal, Tyler made a split-second decision. "Olivia," he whispered, "do you think the mama bear really came back for help?" The little girl nodded without hesitation. "She remembers we were nice, not like before." Tyler felt the weight of her words. Not like before. Not like when he had tormented the trapped cub for his own amusement. He glanced toward the adults, all distracted by the developing situation. "I'm going to help look," he told Olivia quietly. "But you have to stay here, okay? Promise me." Olivia's eyes widened. "But the bear is big, and the storm is scary." "I'll be careful," Tyler assured her. I need to make things right." Before anyone noticed, he slipped out a side door, pulling his hood up against the intensifying rain. The forest edge loomed dark and foreboding, but Tyler pushed aside his fear. Somewhere in those trees, a bear cub might be suffering because of an injury it received while he had been tormenting it. He couldn't live with that knowledge without trying to help. The rain quickly soaked through his clothes as he made his way toward the tree line, careful to stay out of sight of the wildlife officers. He followed the direction he had seen the search team take, moving cautiously into the forest. The thick canopy provided some shelter from the rain, but the gathering darkness made it difficult to see far ahead. Thunder crashed overhead, causing Tyler to jump. He pushed forward, calling softly, "Ranger Collins?" "Mr. Patterson," but the storm swallowed his voice. After 15 minutes of careful progress, Tyler realized he had made a terrible mistake. The forest looked completely different in the storm, and he had no idea which direction the search team had gone. Worse, he wasn't entirely sure he could find his way back to the school. As panic began to rise in his chest, a low growl from nearby froze him in place. Slowly turning, Tyler found himself staring into the eyes of the mother bear, no more than 30 feet away. Her fur was slick with rain, her powerful form partly hidden by undergrowth, but her gaze was unmistakably fixed on him. Tyler's mind raced through everything he had recently learned about bear encounters. Don't run, don't make sudden movements, back away slowly. But his feet seemed rooted to the ground, terror replacing rational thought. The bear huffed, taking a step toward him. Then, inexplicably, she turned away, looking over her shoulder as if expecting him to follow. When he didn't move, she took a few steps, then looked back again. "This is insane," Tyler whispered to himself. "She can't possibly want me to follow her." Yet every wildlife documentary he had ever seen flashed through his mind. Animals had been known to seek human help in extraordinary circumstances. With no better options and a desperate desire to make amends, Tyler cautiously began to follow the bear, maintaining what he hoped was a safe distance. The bear led him deeper into the forest, occasionally pausing to ensure he was still following. The rational part of Tyler's brain screamed that this was suicide, but something stronger pushed him forward. Perhaps guilt, perhaps hope, perhaps a combination of both. After what seemed like an eternity but was probably only 10 minutes, the bear stopped at the edge of a small ravine. She huffed again, pacing anxiously, then carefully made her way down the steep slope. Tyler approached the edge and peered down. At the bottom, partially sheltered by a fallen log, lay the bear cub. Even from this distance, Tyler could see it was in distress. Its breathing appeared labored, and it barely responded to its mother's gentle nudging. "Oh no," Tyler breathed. Finding new courage, he scrambled down the ravine, losing his footing several times on the slippery slope. The mother bear watched his approach, but made no aggressive moves, instead focusing on her suffering cub. As Tyler drew closer, he could see the problem. The cub's front leg was swollen dramatically, with angry red streaks visible through its fur, clear signs of infection. The cut it had received at the dumpster had become life-threatening. The mother bear stood aside, her eyes never leaving Tyler as he knelt near the cub. The small bear whimpered weakly, too ill to fear the human presence. Tyler pulled out his phone, but as expected, there was no signal in the ravine during the storm. He had to make a decision. Leave to find help, risking that he would become lost again and the cub would die before anyone found it, or try something more direct. In the distance, he thought he heard voices calling. The search team must be nearby. Tyler stood and shouted as loudly as he could, "Help! Down here, I found them!" The storm swallowed his cries. The mother bear grew restless, moving between her cub and Tyler as if trying to communicate the urgency of the situation. "I'm trying," Tyler told her, feeling ridiculous for talking to a bear but unable to help himself. "I want to help him." Making a decision, Tyler removed his rain jacket and carefully approached the cub. The mother bear huffed but didn't interfere as he gently wrapped the jacket around her baby. With extreme caution, Tyler lifted the bundled cub, surprised by how light it felt. "I'm going to get him help," he said, looking directly at the mother bear. "I promise." Struggling up the ravine with his precious burden, Tyler found himself in an extraordinary position, trusting a wild predator to understand his intentions, while that predator trusted him with her most valuable possession. Each step was a testament to something beyond normal human-animal interactions, something Tyler couldn't explain but felt to his core. At the top of the ravine, relief flooded through him as he spotted flashlight beams cutting through the forest gloom. "Here!" he shouted. "I'm over here!" The lights swung in his direction, and soon Ranger Collins and Mr. Patterson emerged from the trees, expressions changing from concern to shock as they took in the scene. Tyler, soaked and muddy, holding a wrapped bear cub with its mother standing calmly beside him. "Don't move," Ranger Collins ordered, her hand moving toward her tranquilizer gun. "No, wait," Tyler called. "She's not attacking. The cub is really sick. His leg is infected. I think she brought me here to help him." Mr. Patterson stepped forward cautiously. "The boy's right," he said, after examining the situation. "That bear ain't showing any aggression. She's worried about her cub." The ranger hesitated, years of training battling against the extraordinary scene before her. Slowly, she lowered her weapon. "Let me see the cub," she said, approaching with careful, measured steps. Tyler gently transferred the bundle to her capable hands. The ranger quickly examined the cub, her expression growing serious. "This infection is bad. He needs antibiotics right away." The mother bear watched the proceedings with evident anxiety, but made no threatening moves. When the ranger turned to carry the cub away, however, she huffed loudly and moved to follow. "We can't have a wild bear following us back to civilization," Ranger Collins said firmly. Mr. Patterson considered the situation. "What if we don't go back to town? My cabin's just a mile north of here. I've got a first aid kit that might help, and it would keep the bears away from people." The ranger weighed their limited options. The cub needed immediate attention, and trying to separate it from its mother would likely end badly for everyone. "Lead the way," she finally agreed. As their unusual procession made its way through the storm-lashed forest, Mr. Patterson in front, followed by the ranger carrying the cub, Tyler, and the mother bear, bringing up the rear. Tyler felt a profound sense of purpose. By some miracle, he had been given a chance to atone for his cruelty, to be part of saving the very life he had endangered. Mr. Patterson's cabin appeared through the trees like a vision from another time. A sturdy log structure with a wraparound porch and smoke curling from a stone chimney despite the owner's absence. The old janitor had clearly prepared for the possibility of returning during the storm. "My grandfather built this place in 1932, he explained as he unlocked the heavy wooden door. "Been keeping it stocked and ready my whole life." Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable, with handcrafted furniture and walls lined with books and forest memorabilia. A wood stove radiated welcome heat, and kerosene lamps cast a warm glow over the main room. "Put the cub on the table," Mr. Patterson instructed, clearing away a stack of nature magazines. "I'll get my supplies." Ranger Collins gently placed the bundled cub on the indicated surface. Outside, the mother bear paced anxiously on the porch, unwilling to enter the human dwelling but equally unwilling to abandon her baby. I've never seen anything like this in 20 years of wildlife work, the ranger murmured, shaking her head in disbelief. That bear should be attacking us, not cooperating. Mr. Patterson returned with a large first aid kit and several bottles of clear liquid. My father was a veterinarian, he explained. Taught me a thing or two about treating animals. I keep supplies for the occasional injured creature I find in the woods. Tyler watched in fascination as the elderly man and the ranger worked together, cleaning the cub's infected wound with practiced efficiency. The small bear whimpered, but was too weak to struggle much as they drained the infection, applied antibiotic ointment, and wrapped the leg in clean bandages. He needs proper veterinary care and antibiotics, Ranger Collins said, concern evident in her voice. This is just a stopgap measure. Mr. Patterson nodded grimly. The storm's getting worse. Roads might be washed out by now. We'll have to wait it out here tonight and hope this little fella can hold on until morning. Tyler moved to the window, watching the mother bear as she continued her restless pacing. What about her? She'll be out in the storm all night. The old man considered this, then went to the door. To Tyler's amazement, he opened it and spoke directly to the bear. Your cub is resting. He's getting better. You can come in if you want, but you'll have to behave yourself. Ranger Collins stared at him in disbelief. Mr. Patterson, you can't possibly... Her objection died as the mother bear cautiously approached the door, sniffing the air tentatively. With extreme care, she stepped onto the threshold, her powerful form filling the doorway as she surveyed the interior of the cabin. Let her see her cub, Mr. Patterson said softly. The humans backed away, creating a clear path to the table where the young bear lay wrapped in blankets. The mother approached slowly, every muscle tense as she navigated the unfamiliar environment filled with human scents. When she reached her cub, she gently nuzzled him, then settled onto the floor beside the table, her vigilant eyes fixed on the humans. We should call for backup, Ranger Collins whispered, her hand hovering near her radio. The phones are out, and that radio won't reach through these mountains during a storm, Mr. Patterson replied calmly. Besides, what would you tell them? That we're having a sleepover with a black bear? Despite the tension, Tyler found himself smiling at the absurdity of their situation. Here they were, sharing a cabin with a wild predator that, by all normal standards, should be trying to kill them. Instead, the mother bear seemed to have entered into some unspoken agreement. Tolerance in exchange for help for her cub. As the evening progressed, the storm intensified. Rain lashed against the windows, and wind howled through the trees surrounding the cabin. Mr. Patterson prepared a simple meal of canned soup and crackers, which they ate while keeping a respectful distance from their unusual guest. The ranger maintained her professionalism, though her frequent glances at the bear betrayed her nervousness. We should take shifts watching her, she suggested. I'll take the first. No need, Mr. Patterson interrupted. She's not here to hurt anyone. She's here for her cub, same as she came back to the school for help. Extraordinary circumstances call for extraordinary trust. Tyler sat on the floor, his back against the wall, watching the mother bear. She returned his gaze steadily, and in her dark eyes he saw something that struck him to his core. Not the mindless aggression he had always associated with wild predators, but intelligence, concern, and something like gratitude. I'm sorry, he whispered, the words meant for her ears alone. I'm sorry for what I did to your cub. I promise I'll never hurt another animal again. The bear continued to watch him, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she laid her head down on her paws, her eyes never leaving her cub but her posture relaxing slightly. As the night deepened, the ranger finally succumbed to exhaustion, dozing in an armchair. Mr. Patterson sat by the wood stove, occasionally adding another log to maintain the warmth. Tyler, unable to sleep, moved closer to the table to check on the cub. To his surprise, the small bear was awake, watching him with eyes that seemed clearer than before. Taking this as a positive sign, Tyler carefully reached out, offering his hand for the cub to sniff. The mother bear lifted her head, watching intently but not interfering. The cub weakly sniffed Tyler's fingers, then licked them gently. Something profound passed between boy and bear in that moment, a connection that transcended species, built on forgiveness and second chances. "You're going to be okay," Tyler promised softly. "Both of you." Outside, the storm began to subside, the howling wind gradually fading to a gentle whisper among the trees. Inside the cabin, an unlikely family, human and bear, waited together for the dawn. The first light of morning filtered through the cabin windows, casting long golden rays across the wooden floor. Tyler awoke with a start, momentarily disoriented until the events of the previous day came rushing back. He had fallen asleep sitting against the wall, his head resting on his drawn-up knees. Looking around, he saw Ranger Collins already awake, speaking in hushed tones with Mr. Patterson by the stove. The mother bear remained in the same position, though her eyes were alert, following the human's movements. On the table, the cub stirred, attempting to rise on shaky legs. "He looks better," Tyler observed, carefully approaching the table. Ranger Collins nodded. "The fever seems to have broken during the night. The antibiotics Mr. Patterson had were stronger than I expected. Still, he needs proper veterinary care. I raised a lot of orphaned wildlife in my younger days," Mr. Patterson explained. "Always keep the medicine cabinet stocked just in case." The ranger used her radio, which was now functioning as the storm had passed. "Base, this is Collins. We have a situation at Patterson's cabin in the North Woods. I need Dr. Winters from Wildlife Services here with full medical kit for a bear cub, ASAP." The response came through with minimal static. "Copy that, Collins. Weather's cleared enough for vehicle access. ETA 40 minutes." As they waited for assistance to arrive, Tyler helped Mr. Patterson prepare a simple breakfast of oatmeal and coffee. The domesticity of the scene was surreal, cooking and eating meals while a full-grown black bear watched from across the room. "Do you think they'll take the cub away?" Tyler asked quietly as he washed dishes in a basin of water heated on the stove. Ranger Collins hesitated before answering. Standard protocol would be to treat the cub at our wildlife rehabilitation facility until it's well enough to release. The mother would typically be relocated deeper into the forest preserve. "But you'd separate them?" Tyler pressed, troubled by the thought. "It's procedure," she replied, though her tone suggested she was wrestling with the same concerns. Mr. Patterson dried a plate with methodical care. "Sometimes procedures need to bend for exceptional circumstances," he observed. "And I'd say a mother bear seeking human help is about as exceptional as it gets." As they discussed options, a sound from outside caught their attention, the rumble of an approaching vehicle. The mother bear rose to her feet, instantly alert, a low growl building in her throat. "Easy now," Mr. Patterson soothed, moving slowly toward her. "These are friends, coming to help your cub." Tyler watched in amazement as the old man stood next to the massive bear, speaking to her in the same gentle tone one might use with a nervous dog. Even more incredibly, the bear seemed to understand, or at least respond to his calm energy. She stopped growling, though she remained tense. Ranger Collins went outside to meet the wildlife veterinarian, explaining the unusual situation before leading Dr. Winters into the cabin. The middle-aged woman stopped short at the threshold, her eyes widening at the scene before her. "You weren't exaggerating," she murmured to the ranger. "This is..." unprecedented. With careful movements, Dr. Winters approached the table where the cub lay. The mother bear watched warily, but allowed her to examine her baby. The infection is severe, the vet confirmed after a thorough check. But someone did an excellent job of initial treatment. With proper antibiotics and care, he should make a full recovery. "So, what happens now?" Tyler asked, the question that had been weighing on his mind. Dr. Winters looked thoughtfully at the mother bear, then at her colleagues. "Normally, I'd recommend taking the cub to our facility until he's stable, then releasing both bears far from human habitation. But this isn't a normal situation." Ranger Collins finished for her. The veterinarian nodded. "I've worked with wildlife for 25 years, and I've never seen anything like this. This mother bear has demonstrated exceptional behavior, seeking help, tolerating human proximity, even accepting our intervention with her cub. From a scientific perspective, it's fascinating. From a practical perspective, it challenges our protocols." Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. "What if we treated the cub here?" he suggested. "My cabin is remote enough that there's no risk to the public, but close enough that you can visit daily to check on his progress. The mother stays with her baby, and we all avoid turning this miracle into a tragedy." The wildlife professionals exchanged glances, considering the unorthodox proposal. "It would be highly irregular," Dr. Winters acknowledged. "But then, everything about this case is irregular." After a lengthy discussion weighing various factors, safety, precedent, the bear's welfare, they reached a decision. The cub would remain at the cabin under Mr. Patterson's care, with daily visits from Dr. Winters to administer treatment. Once recovered, both bears would be relocated to a remote area of the forest preserve, far from human habitation but with monitoring to ensure their successful reintegration. As the adults finalized details, Tyler approached the mother bear cautiously. She watched him without aggression, her intelligent eyes seemingly aware of his role in her cub's rescue. "You knew, didn't you?" he said softly. "You knew to come back to the school because we helped before. You remembered that humans had saved your cub once, so you came back when he was in trouble again." The bear tilted her head slightly, in a gesture that seemed almost like acknowledgement. Tyler felt a profound sense of connection, as if some ancient barrier between human and wild had momentarily thinned, allowing understanding to flow between species. Word of the extraordinary situation spread rapidly through Cedar Mill. Despite efforts to maintain privacy, the story of a mother bear seeking human help for her sick cub captured imaginations. Local news vans parked at the forest edge, hoping for glimpses of the unusual recovery operation. School children created get-well cards for the bear cub, which Ms. Reynolds collected and delivered to the cabin. Ms. Bennett brought Olivia to visit, carefully supervised and kept at a safe distance. The little girl beamed with pride when told that her actions had helped create a foundation of trust that ultimately saved the cub's life. "Bears remember kindness," she declared with the simple wisdom of childhood, "just like people do." For 2 weeks, the makeshift wildlife hospital operated from Mr. Patterson's cabin. The cub grew stronger daily, progressing from barely moving to hobbling around with increasing confidence. The mother bear maintained her remarkable tolerance of human presence, particularly of Mr. Patterson, who often sat reading aloud while she rested nearby. Tyler visited whenever allowed, helping with chores and learning more about wildlife care from Dr. Winters. His experience transformed him in ways visible to everyone who knew him. The sullen, cruel teenager was gone, replaced by a thoughtful young man with a newfound purpose. "I'm thinking about becoming a wildlife veterinarian," he confided to Mr. Patterson one afternoon as they chopped.